Hello guys, welcome to the Trading Parrot. Bitcoin is trading at $16,000. US shutdown. Uptober apparently is here. We have to look into CPR models to see the new pivots. We are in a virgin month. We need to look if this pump is driven by futures, spot, are we out of the woods, and all of that. Of course, I'll keep you up to date with our current long that is still open and well now in the profits. I already updated my Patreon community with my moves, so make sure you don't miss that part either. There are always timestamps in every single video I put out. This is one more that is gonna be packed with alpha, so if you wanna skip into general markets update, altcoin update, that's typically at the end of the video, but of course you don't have to guess, it's all in the timestamps. And finally, it's here. We have a new campaign on Bluffing. This time is offering an iPhone 17. Trade futures, big win. Campaign ends on the 19th of October, so you still have time to take advantage of this. Any trading volume that you have, you will get a reward. Of course, if you have huge trading volume, then you can take an iPhone for free. Yesterday, I put out 2 additional videos in case you missed them. There is this one where I cover 30 different crypto channels that I have watched in the past. Some of them I criticize them, some of them I give them a lot of credit for things that I took from them. But of course, this, the Trading Parrot, is the best channel out of all of them, that's for sure. Yesterday I also did a live TA session, public, for free. You can go and watch it. It's 1 hour covering a long list of altcoins. Don't worry if you miss it. Don't worry if I didn't cover your altcoin. You can always join my Patreon as an elite member. Tomorrow we will have a private session at 12 UTC time, and you still have time to fill the poll and submit up to 5 coins. US government officially shuts down after running out of money. That's what Global Eye News is saying. The data-driven reality. History says the dip on the US government shutdown news will be bought in over 85% of the cases. So there is a chance that the upside that we are currently seeing, that started already on the 30th of September yesterday, is partially supported by the expectations of upside after the shutdown ends. If you missed the video yesterday, I made a video with a heavy coverage of the shutdown. I included 3 different scenarios, so I suggest that you go into that one and you check the timestamps to find where I talk about that. Today I won't cover it that in depth because it gets boring to repeat it. The US government shutdown, and this is the last one. For the first time since 2018, the US is about to enter government shutdown. I believe it's already in that. This will furlough 750,000 workers per day, costing 400 million in daily compensation. What does it all mean? Well, in a nutshell, as you can see in past performance, most of the time there is a recovery, and many times the shutdown occurs in a local bottom. Apparently, starting the day on ET time, the shutdown starts, and this was after the Congress missed the funding deadline. Bitcoin moves, though, looks driven mainly by spot ETF inflows and the usual Uptober seasonality narrative, not necessarily the shutdown, but that is what ChatGPT is thinking. I think the 3 things combined could be the positive effect that we are currently seeing. As I mentioned yesterday, remember that it's not all about the shutdown, it's also about the length of the shutdown. And if we go beyond 3 to 6 weeks, the effect could start shifting into negative. I have to say, if there's anything official about the expectation of the length of this one. If you know that, please write it down in the comments and mention what is your source. I will really like to dip into that. Historically, whenever Bitcoin closed September in the green, October was also very green, double digits, as was November and usually December. You can see that this information is public expectation. It's not something I came up with. Everybody is kind of repeating that. Watch out with those patterns. There are plenty of patterns that we have been covering in this channel throughout the full cycle in the past 3-4 years, and many of them didn't play out, so don't take them necessarily for granted. Also consider that these squares in here in green only track the closing performance, but within the month there can be still negativity. Of course, we started the 1st of October now with upside, but 1 year ago, after a green September, that was not the case. We went 12% down, so just allow some room for not necessarily being what you expect. Glassnode is saying that the dominance has rebounded from 57 to 59, very close to 60, alongside price strength near 114. This mean reversion suggests a healthier market structure, as BTC-led rallies have historically proven more sustainable than those driven by altcoins. So the takeaway of this is, if you are into altcoins and you see downside while Bitcoin is pumping, as long as Bitcoin continues and finds a new range and holds that new range for a while, that is where the altcoins really strongly come back. If Bitcoin fails to do that and gets an ugly rejection with a new lower low on daily or even worse on weekly time frame, that's a different story, and that is what altcoins are fearing that could happen, and it explains why altcoins wait for the full confirmation of Bitcoin achieving something. But we got some more bullish things to cover. Spot taker CBD, the cumulative volume delta on the last 90 days, is showing for the first time green, and this is one of the checkboxes that we really need to see. Spot taker CBD being in the green, it means that people are panic buying with market orders into spot, and areas dominated by that should give us a little bit more of reassurance of where we are. By itself is nothing, of course, it's not a tradable signal, it's just additional confidence. And what the hell is this? This is a Chinese woman that was convicted in the UK. Authorities seized 61,000 Bitcoin worth $6.7 billion. The funds tied to a massive fraud that scammed 128,000 victims. She held more Bitcoin than any corporate entity besides Sailor. I'm sure that Sailor will love to date her just because of the Bitcoin, of course. Bitcoin just made history. BTC just closed its highest quarterly candle ever. Wow, and that's amazing. Just a few additional shutdown facts that I like to run with you. Sorry on insisting on this, but I find it interesting. The average length of a shutdown is only 8 days. S&P 500 has ended higher 1 year after a shutdown of 86% of cases. Notice that with the average of 8 days, that sets basically everything to do with unemployment incoming on Friday out of the scope. It means that probably they're gonna skip providing this data. So that means no effect coming from this information. Interestingly, after the shutdown got confirmed, we pumped into 94.6% expectations of the rate cut in October, and in December we got 76 and 22, but we got a potential double cut in here. S&P posts an average gain of 13% 1 year after. During 35-day shutdown in 2018, the S&P 500 rally 11 days. So that makes it very interesting. Not necessarily a long shutdown means downside. While the government is shut down, the US defers 400 a day, and the Fed generally turns more dovish if government data releases are paused. And at the same time we get the shutdown, we get gold hitting RSI 90 on the monthly chart, which is just crazy. The last time that happened was around 1980. That's 45 years ago to have an RSI 90 on gold. Of course, if you just focus on the number 90, you can see that there was not just a huge drawdown right after that, but a long period of gold just going sideways into 2004 from 1980. Pretty much a stable coin all this period before starting a rally into the 2000s and into the 4000s. TechDev is pointing out something that I actually find interesting. This is called the ramp phase, which is an area where you see the price going up, but not in a very pronounced exponential phase, more like upside, but with a little bit of consolidation. And if that matches with some RSI divergence, as we can see in these two instances, not necessarily on the first one, watch out, this doesn't match the same as these two. TechDev, come on. In this case, yes, but if what he wanted to point out was divergence against liquidity weighted global risk index, we got 2 out of 3 instances where that thing happens that we get a pump. So since this has been pretty much the same, he expects another pump from here. What I have to say against this, not necessarily that I'm not bullish, I am bullish, but the length of this is a lot more than the previous instances. It's pretty much like expecting that the pump starts from each of the tops in terms of timing. Metaplanet acquires 5,000 Bitcoin, Treasury rises to almost 31,000 Bitcoin, that is bullish 8 out of 10. Uptober starts, Bitcoin breaks above 116 intraday, that's a 7 out of 10, and a 6 out of 10 is that Bitcoin ETFs pull 7.8 billion inflows in Q3 despite choppy September. Being in October and having on the hand this 116k should be bringing more attention into Bitcoin, but as we can see in here, that's not yet the case. We got an 18. Altcoins still also at the lows of 25s. And I got incoming some questions from my Patreon community. You can always join, the link is in the description. Daniel is asking, is there any short setup appearing on the short-term horizon after liquidating a bunch of shorts recently? And yes, I am gonna be looking into a short. There is an area of liquidity slightly higher than 116k that could provide enough risk reward for me to start dipping into a short. Is the current BTC pump driven by futures or spot? We got spot kind of joining the party at the moment. Initially, it was mainly driven by futures. So that is a good sign. Hopefully, we accelerate on the spot. Something I am liking is that is spot dominant all this downside in here. Interestingly, the chart hasn't updated since the end of August. So I wish we could see a new reading in here to see if the spot is still the case dominating. Daily RSI is at resistance. How low can we go if we fail? Yes, as you can see, on price is breaking out and on RSI at the same time in the same day, so that is acceptable in terms of quality for, you know, my personal criteria. But since this is resistance, you're absolutely right. Resistance could send you back down into 40 once again, or it could send you into the global support, and that's why I am riding this long and moving my stop loss every time I see a new swing low confirmed to the upside. That is the time I move my stop loss. If price fails in here, we still take profits. If that breaks out in there, we hold and we see what happens when it comes to reaching levels of 84. We'll cover the TA. Let's continue with the questions first. Can BTC dominance tell us anything about this current pump? And as I mentioned, Lara, in one of those tweets, BTC dominance increasing with the price increasing is actually something healthy, because it means that people are somehow believing in the rally and saying, well, I might as well jump into Bitcoin instead of altcoins because there might be an incoming pump into all-time highs. I don't want to miss it. Therefore, some flipping occurs if there's confidence into that. And I guess the shutdown, the Uptober expectations from trader are causing some of that dominance to increase with the pump. As long as that's sustained and we don't get an ugly rejection, those are the signs that we want to see. Volume analysis of the current pump and discussion if led by spot or leverage, which I already covered, sustainable October rally or not. So all the way down in here, the volume has been decreasing on the 4-hour, on the daily as well, it's been decreasing. But notice that once we start breaking highs, is only when we start seeing the volume to come in, and that is a consequence of all the people that have liquidity at the highs that are forced to close, which adds more fuel to the pump. But still, we are in an area in here where we cannot really discard by volume coming down. Sure, on the lower time frames, maybe we can use the volume to do some analysis on the swings, but when it comes to using the volume to confirming that we are actually going to put a new all-time high and enter into price discovery in this area, then we need to wait for what happens with the volume after we pinch 125 pretty much. We'll get into the CPR levels, guys. This is a virgin month so far. Very interesting, and I don't want to spoil the best part, so let's go back into the questions. US shutdown. I would like to know more why this impacts so much, and I wasn't in any trades, but I would like to know history. So I already covered this decently today, and in the video yesterday it was very in-depth, so go Suzanne and watch today's video and yesterday check the timestamps. Eddie's asking, how do you reallocate your profits? Do you siphon them off into safe asset like yield, bearing stable, or do you rotate it into another trade? ASAP. When it comes to crypto, I'm taking out a little bit and I'm just leaving some for trading. I am thinking a little bit real estate, and I'm thinking also to rotate into safer things that are necessary in case there is some pullback in the market. Although I have to say that it is a tricky one because we are in the middle of everything bubble. People talk about a bubble on pretty much every asset class at the moment. So you kind of have to look outside the box and see if, one bubble pops and it brings, all of them significantly to the downside, what could be the things that people look for the most. Speaking about things on the general market, let's cover the macro. US government shutdown, of course, we already covered that. The US ISM manufacturing came in at 49. That was a contraction versus the 48.7. Very small. This is actually a 6 out of 10, so slightly bullish. Weak growth supports rate cut odds, which explains it. Labor market, JOLTS openings up slightly, hiring weaker. So there's a continued cooling, and this is a 6 out of 10 again because jobs market, any damage to it supports rate cuts. The market is still pricing in another 25 basis points in October. We saw that spiking into 94% now, and the drama with trade war continues, this time Japan versus US, and we got Taiwan now the largest buyer of Russian naphtha. That's a 4 out of 10 because it highlights shifting energy alignments, adds background geopolitical risk premium. A couple of hours ago, I mentioned in an article sent to the email of every single patron that I moved my stop loss from break-even into 112.4. Potentially, I'm gonna move it slightly higher into 113.4. I do want to take profits, but I also want to give some room for the price to explore the areas of 119. Potentially, we get there. I do not know if we are gonna make it. Later in the video, we're gonna look into liquidity, where we cover the most likely scenarios, but of course, always acknowledging that we have no damn clue where the price is gonna go. That's why we need to manage that risk. So speaking about risk, we do still have the CME gap that starts from roughly around 110.8 into 109.3. That on the top is the premium price on CME, and this is on Binance. So we are going to continue tracking that. I'm pretty sure that we're gonna feel it eventually, and that could bring a little bit of drama if it happens on October. Do not get so disappointed if we just come to close the gap. Remember last year we had drama for 2 weeks, around 11 days in the beginning of October, and we still managed to put all-time highs and do an amazing impulsive move to the upside. So coming back down, this time this is just 6%. Last 24 from high to bottom was at 12%. From where we are at 12%, he puts you at 103. That will be painful to watch, but hey, it was also painful to watch in October last year when everybody was shouting Uptober and we didn't get it. Bitcoin status is up to date now, and I'm sharing it with my community. We got a 4-hour breakout, a potential daily breakout as well. We closed September inside the pivots. We couldn't touch any. We'll look into that in a second, and everything else is the same as yesterday. You can see that the RSI on the 4-hour has achieved a higher high in here, 75 almost relative to 72. We are getting very close, around 10 points from 84, which is the global resistance on the RSI that is priced at 120.878. We got rejected the first time in here. They put this low and we came back to the same momentum. That means that so far we do not have a bearish divergence yet. We did not need to test at 42 showing strength, but the volatility is getting us again into an area where we start printing some signs of a slowdown in the upside. Notice that we got those in here, 1, 2, and 3. We still push slightly higher at the cost of bearish divergences, and then we move down. So if we start now coming out from here, coming back down slightly, we will get the first signal that says volatility is speaking to the upside. But notice how bullish this looks to me. This is almost like an inverse head and shoulder on the 4-hour that is currently breaking out. Head and shoulders are not what they used to be in terms of performance and accuracy, but it's pointing in confluence to the same area of the 120 that is the global resistance of the 4-hour. So maybe that counts up as slightly higher chances that we can get there. And you can see why I'm trailing and I'm starting to update my Patreon community, because if we get there, I want to make sure that I'm part of that. If we do not get there, I want to make sure that I still take profits and I enter from another area of value. So if you were wondering where could it be a short, well, I will say at the order block at 118 into 120, a small short relative to the size of my account should not damage that much. Always with this in mind, that the daily could confirm a breakout and go into 83, 84. So where is that in the price in case we enter in a short and we get underwater? That at the moment, guys, is at 143. So not having enough dry powder to go into 143 or even higher than that and entering too early in a short could be something that spans for quite a while before you're back into the profit. So be aware of that when taking a short, particularly taking a short on the first days of October into November. So, kind of spread away your entries, assuming that you are as conservative as I am. Some people risk a lot more than I do, clearly. That is resistance. If it plays out your short straight away, that can go into 39 or into 26 if we get some downside in October, but you know what is the risk, right? There's a lot of upside on the daily at the moment. CPR. All right, this is gonna be interesting. We didn't test the short-term realized price. That was at 107.7. We didn't close the liquidity at 107, which I say it's really odd that we go up and we don't test that level. Still, I enter along, we are in profit, fine. But I find really odd that we didn't go there, isn't it? Sometimes that happens, but it's just a few occasions, rarely. Then, in September, we couldn't manage to test the first resistance. So that adds some bearish pressure on October, according to the model. And if you pay attention in here, these 3 white dots are the new pivots for October. They were placed roughly around where I am, and they are slightly more tight than I was expecting. But we can delete them, and we can look at my expectations for the CPR support that were a bit off. As I say, this is a very tight month from bottom to top. That is around 32K. You can get even 60K of spread of the monthly CPR in a month, but you can also see that this is a virgin month. So we haven't touched 113.5. And around there is where I have thought about placing my stop loss, and price could come into the pivots just to lose virginity just by coming and testing that as support. Hopefully, if it breaks 112.5 at the moment and it closes below that, there is a risk that we go into the first support, which is located at 108. The second one, by the way, is at 102.2. The third is at 97.5. Resistance is 118.8. Second is 123.8, and third is 129.6. That gives you the levels to play with for your TA. Even if you're not gonna now use CPR, you can look into other indicators and keep that range in mind. Bull market support band, after I completely destroyed with my opinion, started finally working. It is currently holding the price at that 111.7, and we are about to potentially put an engulfing candle weekly. We need to wait until Sunday, but if Sunday holds this, we might find the answer of why we had a rejection at 117 that failed, came back down, it got bought up above the bull market support band, leaving a week to the downside. So we have two contrarian signals right after these 3 red crowds, or whatever you want to call them, that was also bearish, calling for this to turn into a dead cat bounce. Remember, we talked about the bear flag, and that bear flag was supposed to go slightly lower, but it couldn't manage to put a new lower low. It ended up printing a double bottom, which was one of the scenarios that we also cover. Now we need to break this resistance on the weekly. 117 is gonna be quite important because we already failed once. So the second time, everybody's gonna be putting the eyes on that as we approach liquidity. If we do go higher here, we have liquidity at 119. So after we consume that, we need to answer the question, did we just go into 119 to take that liquidity, and then we we see on the weekly after that a similar rejection to this, and we come back below resistance, and then we break the bull market support band? Or do we reclaim 117.5 and we turn it into support to finally put a new higher high in here on a closing basis price? Too many questions, and I do not have the answers. I just acknowledge the risk of those things failing, and I adapt my strategy. Remember, my focus is to make money, not to know what's going to happen. I do not know if we're going lower or higher, and I don't care. I don't need to know. If someone trades thinking they do know what's going to happen, that is a bad trader, because he really doesn't know. He's making you believe he knows because he's got some shady interests. Basically, he wants just to hook you to watch the video. In here, the focus is make money, not know direction. I hope that's clear now. And leverage squeeze has progressed, putting new signs of weakness around here. We got plenty of them, but today we have crossed the top percentile band like we did in this area in here. What happens after that? It just carry on. On this one, we started pinching it 3 times and then we came back down. So it's not for granted that it will slow down and stop the upside, but we are in an area where we need to define what's going to happen. Notice that around October, we got a strong sell in here that collapsed the price around a 9%. That was within November, but still we carry on to the upside. So be prepared for those type of signals that only call for a swing low, not necessarily for the end of an uptrend. And yeah, here we have now the SOPR signals looking better than before, right? We had this one, did a drawdown, look really bad. Oh, it doesn't work. This one doesn't work either. On Ethereum, it doesn't work either. Now you let time pass and you zoom out and it starts looking pretty much like the other ones in the past, right? Which to me, it looks pretty good. Yes, guys, we finished September and we put a third bear cross on the stochastic RSI and 2 bearish divergences against the price action on the monthly. So that's confirmed. Now the RSI is pointing down. We have a difficult task. We want to put a bull cross from here and we want to do a breakout from this trend line to kind of invalidate what this is saying. And it's saying something very clear. It's saying we are going into a bear market in the monthly time frame. So that doesn't mean next month. It could mean in 3 or 4 months. But it says bear market supposed to be here. Maybe after a pump or so. So let's say what happens now in October if we close at 130. Do we get a bull cross? Yeah, we get a bull cross right there. I'm using a modified version of the stochastic RSI. I put just a few additional lines to this to use the price I give to see at what price do we get something. So if I put it to 120, we do not get a bull cross, and that will be pretty disappointing. Of course, we want a bull cross. Well, in my mind, I also want the bear cross because it will be nice to short the bear market, wouldn't it? So yeah, again, 130 kind of prints a bull cross in October right after the bear one from September that is now confirmed. Has the futures oscillator crossed the blue line to make it safer to take a short? Not yet. We are still in the middle of the range in here unless this hasn't updated. The last reading is from yesterday, so we'll have to see later today if the indicator updates. If it's over 11%, typically at that point it's safer to start thinking short. Still, we cannot make it below the 0 line on the liquidations dominance. I'm tempted to say that we are done with liquidating longs for now, because after a month and a half, a clear move back down into 2.3%. So if you look into past performance, you may agree or not, but have a look, pause the video and think, are we due for some red now? And red is a season where the shorts get liquidated. Spot and Ethereum ETFs are in the positive 2 days in a row. No all-time highs necessarily in cumulative flows. We are in fear. No, we are in neutral at 49, more or less the same as yesterday. And I'm looking into now liquidation pools, and you can see that we just liquidated this 116, which is also a very interesting point, because if you put this pattern up, it matches that. We broke down in here. We made everything look like we were gonna go straight into 107, but we got bought up, we reclaimed, and that made a whole move into here. So now that is a point of interest because this could get rejected from here, or it could go for number 1. Let's see what else we got on the upside. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4 spanning into 130. That's the roadmap to get the bullish cross on the stochastic monthly. Hopefully we can get into 4, and I'm still riding my long. But if October does a little bit of a shake off in the middle of the month or by the end of the month, well, then we got that 107 as a good candidate and the low hanging fruit of that CME gap located at 110. Notice that on the daily we are kind of printing or about to complete a double bottom. Let's place the neckline horizontally. We still don't do it, but we're getting very close to that, and the full high of this sends you in straight into the liquidity. So that's amazing, because getting patterns that have technical targets that can achieve liquidity makes the pattern double value. Okay, if you cannot make it, you start thinking they're gonna need a little bit of extra strength coming from something else. What else? Well, in this case, just the technical pattern makes it there. There can be, you know, a failure if you just go to 119 or if you go into 121, sure, but if you make the full technical target, that puts you into the biggest liquidity cluster that we have in all the range of prices of Bitcoin at the moment. And that even is bigger than this. This is just tracking 3 months, whereas this is tracking everything, or a lot more, I will say. Below the price, we left this 108. That's the largest, apart from 119. Liquidations last 12 hours are shorts primarily, but don't get confused. We still don't get something like this on the short side. This was massive for longs, and eventually the shorts are gonna get a big, and I'm not gonna say it in here, D that is gonna leave them in pain for a few days, I will say. And that is one risk of entering with a short too early. That is my concern, because we got plenty of patterns that have upside. So option 1, we have some downside, yeah, in October, and we take advantage with a small short. But if we get one of these in red, that small short needs to survive with collateral until we can add from way higher, bigger volume, so we can survive, you know, that without having to take a loss. And in here we have coming in around 50 million in liquidity, but the purple whales are currently involved in this upside. You can see that there's been liquidations, that is 250, nothing comparable with what we have on the long side recently. Open interest continues to climb, but the shorts took a dip in here and the longs continue to increase. CBD is turning into the positive. Let me zoom out in here. Not enough to take the highs of early September, but it seems that they are entering, and at the moment we got incoming some resistance at 117. Yeah, that's an important level. With 118 there is liquidity there from shorts that are going to be liquidated if we get there, but then there is 120 where we have additional liquidity and some levels that we already mentioned too. Support is not massive. We got 2 levels that together make around 2k in liquidity on Binance, around the 116. The delta now it's putting 500k the longs at risk, and we did, as I say, take the open interest before resuming the upside. So I didn't know what was gonna happen. This is not dark magic. I don't have crystal balls. They are different types. They are for a different purpose than forecasting the price. But you see, high likelihood that you go and pierce a level where the open interest spiked to the upside, and we took 1, not the number 2, so I didn't need to get stopped out. So I'm happily still riding my position. So at the moment, I could start considering moving my stop loss slightly higher, maybe into the 113.5, just because that open interest was already taken. Therefore, price has a bit more freedom to go to the upside. The 5 to 10% now is in the green, the 10 to 20 in the order book, the 2 to 5 slightly, but on the 0 to 1 and 1 to 2, it's negative. That is obvious because we have all this resistance in the 1 to 2% deviation. The funding rates in the negative definitely help this to be a short-lived move to the downside for the shorts. That funding rate got smashed moving up, as you can see in there. We took all the fair value gaps up until 116. We got a remaining bit in here, and then there are fatty ones, but they start from 119. So really we need to get into that big liquidity and then see if we can consume all these fair value gaps. In theory, passing through this should attract the price. So crossing fingers that that attraction actually plays out. If not, the failure can bring this into 111, close the CME gap, go to the liquidity of the past 3 months at 107. That is the risk that we now know precisely how it works. And I have a new sponsor, guys. It's called VT Markets, which I am personally gonna start using for everything to do with general markets. When it comes to Forex, stocks, and indices, I will be making my trades on this particular broker. They're supported everywhere except for the US. Eventually, I will have also one supported in the US, and I'm considering to move my content related to general markets, Forex, and indices into separate videos. Let me know if you will prefer that or if you will prefer a separate channel in YouTube. Have a look at the description because it's currently offering 100% welcome bonus up until $1,000. You can deposit crypto and start trading, or you can deposit or withdraw fiat. Of course, it's a broker, so it requires KYC. So yesterday was pretty significant again for Nvidia. The market is kind of mixed. Let's start with the DXY. Let's see how we are doing with the breakout, and currently still in the testing phase. Gold is at all-time highs. It pinched 3.9k, but it's right there at the resistance again of 79. Are we really gonna get a breakout of gold over 79 and hold it, or are we gonna respect this downside trend line and put a new bearish divergence and eventually produce a huge crash? Notice that this is now on the monthly. That's where you can see the RSI at 90, really crazy. If you wanna track the breakdown of gold, I will suggest to use the monthly RSI and place a line holding all this impulsive move. Whenever you get a break on the monthly, like this one in here that happened in October on 2020, that's where you can see the momentum really crashing. Notice that in 2020 that wasn't enough to really produce a huge crash. It was just 21%. From here to the upside, we are already 137%. So a 20% is pretty much nothing. A real crash, I will say, like a 60% on gold, although I'm not expecting that. VIX is getting close and again testing the 21 weekly, pointing up on the momentum. I really want to see a breakout in here of the momentum and a breakout against the 21 weekly to confirm that the VIX is about to do something big. What big? I am expecting that after this V recovery, Nasdaq and S&P should put some sort of pullback, not crash, not collapse. Initially, we need a pullback. We could make use of the high bearish signals of the rolling over of the momentum to come back down into the 21 weekly, which coincides with the bull market support band at around 23,000 for Nasdaq, and on the S&P around 625, or call it 6.3, depending on where you're trading your indices. As I mentioned yesterday, Nikkei is about to confirm this week potentially another breakdown. The rolling over is obvious. There's been multiple phases of breakdown of this already that I covered yesterday, and eventually that's gonna puke. The 21 weekly is currently located at 41, and that is also the previous resistance, so it might be calling for a flash in here into that. Of course, I don't know the future, but that is what the technicals are screaming for. If S&P gets away with holding the levels and really not having that breakdown, it could hunt for the liquidity that has been building up from shorts at the moment. That's typically calling for funds and other asset managers to say, let's just go for the liquidity. They're shorting too much and they hunt them. We already took this massive one, and potentially 700 and 720 could be achievable to the upside. I want to cover as well gold liquidity. Let's see where we are standing in here on the daily. We got the 4,000 and the 4,339 as big levels of liquidity. Those could make potentially that topping signal that I mentioned in the chart coming from the momentum at 79 on the RSI, being a top fail, in which case we could see a breakout. But look from where you are breaking out, from 80 into what? Into 90 on the weekly? I don't know, let me zoom out. We are already at the very highs of the RSI. We've seen 98. Where is that? Oh, that's crazy. In the 80s, we reached 98 on gold. That's where it started popping. Oh gosh. So this broke from 80s in 78, pretty much where I was born. And since I was born, obviously, it broke out into 98 and gold made a new all-time high. My God, you can tell I'm born in Argentina, clearly. 3 times champions of the world, or 2 times. Well, I don't know anything about football. Let's go into altcoin season and let's see what's going on in here. With Bitcoin going up and the Bitcoin dominance going up, we reduced from 67 now into 65. That is kind of the fears typical that you get during a move up in Bitcoin, because when Bitcoin moves up, it could fail and it could do an ugly rejection, and that's why the altcoins try to anticipate and they start rotating into Bitcoin, also on the fear that Bitcoin might do a larger pump and they might miss it out. Still, altcoins are in the positive for the day. We still don't get a breakout or breakdown in here of the USD versus total free dominance, which is really what I'm looking for, and the dominance hasn't changed that much. At the moment it's sitting almost at 59%, but it managed to put some highs at 59. The RSI momentum calls for a move into 48. I already mentioned that we are at support, so potentially we could go into 48 on this and maybe move that dominance into the 60s. But if we reclaim 48, then it could go beyond the 60s, so watch out for that. With your altcoins, USD is on a swing low in here, dominance, but it's still defending this thing. It hasn't broken down. Ideally, I would like in October, November to see here a failure, a breakdown of this line of 46 on USDT dominance, so we can say, yeah, this breakout was just that and nothing else. Because if this continues to the upside, and if it's even worse, if it starts accelerating outside this channel to the upside in here, we can get a signal that we are entering into bear market, and that's why I want this to come down. Notice in here, there is the breakout, there is a little bit of indecision, and then there is an impulsive move. Well, what happened after is March of 2025, which, if you remember, many of the people watching this channel in March were in pain, and that's because we confirmed a breakout of USDT dominance into very highs. So let's cross finger to get the opposite signal, which is a breakdown from 45 into the downside on the weekly time frame. Ethereum looking really good in here, right? We reclaimed the support, we tested perfectly a multi-year breakout on Ethereum, and now we are in the middle of a green candle. Now the best that we can hope for, the most bullish sign, will be obviously an all-time high. But if we don't get that, can we get a close of the month in October above 4.4? That could signal really crazy times, guys. That could bring Ethereum into way higher and all the altcoins with it to the upside. During October, we are allowed for Ethereum to go intra-candle even up to 3.5, as long as we ideally reclaim the support with the RSI closing like this or higher. And Total 2 and Total 3 are progressing pretty fast. Total 2, thanks to Ethereum, is at 66 in the breakout area to the upside, whereas Total 3 is not yet there. We need still to get into 71 to confirm the breakout. That one doesn't include Ethereum, of course. So let me do the summary. We have achieved a lot, guys, a lot on the 4-hour, on the daily. Hopefully, if we close today at these levels, that's gonna be big. It's gonna be a breakout from multiple elements calling for additional upside. Let's get the breakout on the daily and we can start talking about way bigger numbers. Weekly needs to break out and hold by the end of the week 117.2. That will be the line in the sand to flip fully, but we get a bunch of things bringing in some risk for the month of October, starting with the CME Gap, the Virgin CPR that you can see right here, and the 107 largest bull on the last 3 months. Now, don't get me wrong, if the bulls really step in strong long, we might delay going into those levels for later, and that's why I am not closing my long. That's why I'm trailing it and I'm moving my stop loss from 111.4 into 112.4. Very likely that I'm gonna move it higher very soon, and I will let you know if that's the case. First, to my Patreon community, any tier does it. With Elite, you can join the live stream tomorrow though. I hope you are in the profits, I hope you are in the green, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.